Hi, I'm Jess Ayers, and I play Tazu, the blue Dragonborn monk on Fables of Refuge. When I started building Tazu, I chose a monk first before I chose her race. Mostly because I'm a huge fan of Critical Role, and Marisha Ray plays Beauregard, who's a monk on that show. And Beauregard just does these really cool things and hits things a lot. I thought that was cool, and I wanted to do that too. I chose to play a Dragonborn based on our first playtest game we played for Fables of Refuge. Jarrett ran a short game for me, Carter, Allie, and Laura to sort of test to make sure that we could play well together and that we liked playing together. And in that playtest game, he had these pre-generated characters for us to use, so we didn't have to worry about building anything yet. My character that I played actually happened to be a Dragonborn. I think it was a bronze Dragonborn actually, which also has the lightning breath. And so I really liked that aspect of the character. I really liked the lightning breath, and I wanted to do that, but I didn't really want to play the metallic Dragonborn, so I chose a chromatic Dragonborn, which is blue. And that's great because I like the color blue. Choosing a blue Dragonborn was probably also unconsciously influenced by my love of Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Legend of Korra, and probably Bo. My favorite thing about playing Tazu as a Dragonborn is her lightning breath, for sure. She can only use it once a day, but when it hits, it's really useful. My least favorite thing about being a Dragonborn is no dark vision. Everyone else in the party has dark vision. I do not. That's kind of a bummer. I think Dragonborn are one of 3 races in the regular player's handbook that don't have dark vision, and I think that's silly. What influenced my decision to make a monk was probably mostly Bo from Critical Role, but also because I practiced Krav Maga in real life, and I kind of wanted to see what just punching things to death would be like in a fantasy setting. I really love the most how versatile monks are. They rely more on their speed and dexterity versus like brute strength like a barbarian or something. They get some really amazing abilities at higher levels where they are essentially immune to like everything. The only downside I've found so far to playing a monk is monks aren't proficient in that many weapons. So your choice of weapon is limited to like quarterstaves and fists, which is fine, but I'd say that's the downside to being a monk. So Tazu practices the way of the open hand, which is more like a fighter style subclass for the monks. Some monk subclasses have like more roguelike abilities or have some spellcasting abilities, but Tazu's basically, her subclass makes her a hand-to-hand combat specialist. I chose this mostly based on my real-life self-defense experience, and I just, again, thought it would be cool to put in a fantasy setting, but it's also why I chose Way of the Open Hand versus something else. Also plays into Tazu's backstory fairly heavily, but we haven't really revealed much of that in game, so that's all I'll say about it right now. When you get to 2nd level as a monk, you get what's called key points. You can channel your own ki, which is like your chi or your internal energy, and like manipulate other people's ki. Starting at level 2, you get 2 points, and then you get more points as you level up. They're essentially like bonus uses of attack abilities. At higher levels, you get like cooler abilities that you can spend key points to use. So that's the big thing to know when going into playing a monk for the first time. The biggest decision you have to make when you're playing a monk is what your monastic tradition or your subclass is going to be. Tazu's is Way of the Open Hand. If it's your first time playing D&D, or you don't want to deal with spellcasting at all, the two subclasses I recommend for like first-time players or people who want to keep it simple is Way of the Drunken Master or Way of the Kinsai. Both of those are found in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Both of those are more combat, defense, weapon-based monk subclasses, and there's no spellcasting. If you're new and you want to like dip your toe into playing with spellcasting, there's always Way of the Shadow or Way of the Sun Soul. Way of the Shadow's in the Player's Handbook. Way of the Sun Soul is in Xanathar's Guide. Those have limited spellcasting abilities, so you can kind of dip your toe into the spellcasting pool if you're not ready to like play a sorcerer or a cleric. So I've played almost every class in D&D or in Pathfinder or other role-playing games, but I've never played a rogue. And that surprises me actually, because when I play video games, I love sneaking around and like getting sneak attack and getting extra damage points because I sneak up and kill somebody. Like I love doing that in games. So I'm actually really surprised that I've never decided to play a rogue in D&D, but that's what I'm most looking forward to playing next, whenever that is. So my go-to class in the past has always been a druid. I've played 3.5 and I've also played Pathfinder, and I've always played druids. Don't know why, they've just always kind of spoken to me. I do feel like in 5th edition they've kind of nerfed the druid a little bit compared to older editions or other tabletop RPGs. Like you used to be able to summon like all kinds of stuff or have an animal companion, a lot like rangers. But they kind of got rid of all of that, and so it's not that druids aren't cool anymore. I still like them and they can still do a lot of cool things, but it just feels like they watered down the druid a little bit. So it's probably not going to be my go-to class anymore, but I still like them a lot. Playing a wizard totally intimidates me for some reason. They have so many spells. Wizards have so many spells. They basically have the ability to learn almost any other spellcasting class's spells as long as they find it written down somewhere and add it to their grimoire or their spell book. That's so many spells. Like, I personally get decision fatigue trying to decide what to make for dinner. I cannot imagine trying to plan your spells for the day as a wizard. My brain would probably short circuit. Bro, I can talk. Why can't I make this word happen?